My name is James Connolly, and I had come from Scotland to help James Larkin bring about the 1913 strike and lockout in Dublin. The strike had failed, and now in 1916 it was the most complicated of times in Ireland and makes for a very complicated story. I now believe that in order to establish socialism in Ireland, it was necessary to bring about an independent republic first, and I was preparing my citizen army in Liberty Hall for this revolution.
Home Rule was on its way for Ireland, and John Redmond would deliver it now and would ensure its delivery, having sent off 250,000 Irish lads to the trenches of the Western Front and the far shores of Gallipoli under the colours of the Irish 10th and 16th Divisions to help England in the difficulties of World War I. 35,000 of them never came back and are scattered on the green fields of France alongside the heroes of Ginchy and their black Celtic cross carved by the survivors to honour their fallen comrades. Wives and mothers collected separation allowances at the GPO every week that kept bread and butter on the table and hunger at bay in the Dublin tenements. But Owen MacNeill, who had founded the Irish Volunteer Army 1913 to keep England true to her promise of Home Rule, now disagreed with Redmond.
As leader of the volunteers, I say stay home from the war and protect Ireland in case of German invasion.
But unknowns to MacNeill, others said no. England's difficulty is Ireland's opportunity. A group called the IRB, linking back to the old Fenians of the 1860s, said now is the time to strike for that elusive independent republic of Tone, Emmet and Fenian dreams. Connolly would have to be persuaded to bring his citizen army in and make plans for a revolution. And MacNeill would have to be convinced that the time was right and allow his volunteers to fight. And it would all start with a funeral. A big funeral to Glasnevin Cemetery on Dublin's north side. A big funeral organised by the IRB who were to plan the rising. It was to bury Jeremiah O'Donovan Rossa. He had died in America. He was very respected by Irish nationalists, so the IRB decided to bring his body home and stage a big public burial, seeing the propaganda value here. It was a big opportunity to swell the ranks of the IRB. Patrick Pearse would give the graveside oration, appealing to the hearts and minds of Irishmen, many of whom are pictured, unknowns to themselves, standing on their own graves in what was to become the site of the later Republican plot in Glasnevin.
It has seemed right, before we turn away from this place in which we have laid the mortal remains of O'Donovan Rossa, that one among us should, in the name of all, speak the praise of that valiant man and endeavour to formulate the thought and the hope that are in us as we stand around his grave. And if there is anything that makes it fitting that I, rather than some other, I, rather than one of the grey-haired men who were young with him and shared in his labour and in his suffering, should speak here, it is perhaps that I may be taken as speaking of a new generation that has been rebaptized in the Fenian faith and that has accepted the responsibility of carrying out the Fenian programme. I propose to you then that, here by the grave of this unrepentant Fenian, we renew our baptismal vows, that here by the grave of this unconquered and unconquerable man, we ask of God, each one for himself, such unshakable purpose, such high and gallant courage, such unbreakable strength of soul as belonged to O'Donovan Rossa. Life springs from death, and from the graves of patriot men and women spring living nations. The defenders of this realm have worked well in secret and in the open. They think that they have pacified Ireland. They think that they have purchased half of us and intimidated the other half. They think that they have foreseen everything, think that they have provided against everything. Oh, but the fools, they're fools, they're fools. They have left us our Fenian dead. And while Ireland holds these graves, Ireland unfree shall never be at peace.
But a plan had to be hatched, and a plan had to be secret, and the army had to be gathered. and guns had to be found, and a military plan had to be readied, and all had to be thought out in Tom Clark's shop in Parnell Street. Who would fight? Who would lead? Where to fight? Who would bring the guns? When to proceed? When to delay? And all had to be decided by the IRB and thought out in Tom Clark's shop in Parnell Street. So they set up a military council who set up a military plan. The military plan was to take, occupy and hold well-fortified buildings around the city and to erect barricades to block English getting access to them. The strategy was to be defensive, holding on for as long as possible. This plan was decided by the military council of Pearse, Plunkett, McDermott, Clark and Connolly. There were to be 8 locations. GPO headquarters manned by Pearse, Connolly, Clark, Plunkett and McDermott. Four courts under the command of Edward Daly. South Dublin Union, now St. James's Hospital, under the command of Eamon Cant. Mendicity Institution, under the command of Sean Houston. Jacob's Biscuit Factory, under the command of Thomas MacDonough. Boland's Mills, under the command of Eamon de Valera. Stephen's Green, College of Surgeons, under the command of Thomas Mallon. Dublin Castle, the headquarters of British government, under the command of Sean Connolly. Liberty Hall, the headquarters of Citizen Army, would be the assembly point for all rebel forces on Easter Monday, April 24th, 1916, for the start of the rising.